When history demanded leadership, only one Caribbean leader answered, an editorial by Professor Wall Street. In the defining geopolitical moment of 2026, when principle collided with pragmatism and courage confronted calculation, the Caribbean produced exactly one leader willing to stand unequivocally on the side of democracy, human rights, and the Venezuelan people's decades-long struggle against tyranny. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar of Trinidad and Tobago. While other Caribbean leaders retreated into diplomatic ambiguity, issued carefully hedged statements designed to offend no one, or remained conspicuously silent as Venezuelan citizens suffered under the Maduro dictatorship, Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar demonstrated what transformational leadership looks like. Clear moral positioning combined with strategic courage. The context that demanded courage. For years, Caribbean leaders have watched Venezuela's descent into authoritarianism with studied neutrality. CARICOM's traditional posture, non-interference, respect for sovereignty, diplomatic equidistance, served as convenient cover for avoiding difficult choices. Meanwhile, millions of Venezuelans fled a collapsing economy, rampant crime, political persecution, and humanitarian catastrophe. Trinidad and Tobago absorbed thousands of these refugees. Our citizens witnessed firsthand the human cost of Maduro's misrule. Families separated, professionals reduced to desperation, children fleeing violence. Yet regional leadership remained paralyzed by outdated diplomatic conventions and fear of choosing sides. Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar broke that paralysis. Leadership is choosing when others won't. By explicitly standing with the people of Venezuela against the Maduro regime, the Prime Minister accomplished something unprecedented in modern Caribbean diplomacy. She aligned moral clarity with strategic intelligence. This was not reckless grandstanding. It was calculated leadership grounded in several realities. Democratic solidarity. Authoritarian regimes represent an existential threat to democratic governance everywhere. By supporting Venezuela's democratic opposition, Persad-Bissessar defended not just Venezuelan rights, but the principle that Caribbean democracy matters. Strategic alignment. Trinidad and Tobago's economic future depends on relationships with democratic nations, particularly the United States. While others hedged, the Prime Minister positioned T&T as a reliable democratic partner, a distinction with tangible economic and security benefits. Moral authority. Caribbean nations have historically championed anti-colonialism and self-determination. Persad-Bissessar reclaimed that tradition by standing against a regime that has systematically destroyed Venezuelan democracy, economy, and civil society. Regional leadership. By breaking with CARICOM's paralysis, the Prime Minister demonstrated that small nations can lead through moral courage when larger ones equivocate. Why this marks transformational leadership? Transformational leaders don't follow consensus, they create it. They don't wait for popular opinion, they shape it through conviction. They don't choose safe positions, they choose right ones and accept the consequences. Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar's Venezuela stance embodies this definition. She risked criticism from regional peers invested in non-alignment rhetoric. She accepted potential diplomatic complexity with Venezuela for the sake of democratic principle. She positioned Trinidad and Tobago as a moral leader in Caribbean affairs rather than a passive follower of regional consensus. She demonstrated that small nations can exercise moral authority disproportionate to their size when led by conviction. The Caribbean Transformation Imperative. The Caribbean faces existential challenges, climate change, economic vulnerability, brain drain, crime, institutional weakness. Meeting these challenges requires transformation. Not incremental adjustment, but fundamental reimagining of how Caribbean nations operate domestically and internationally. Transformation demands leaders willing to break with convention, challenge comfortable assumptions, and make difficult choices. Prime Minister Persaud Bissesa's Venezuela position demonstrates precisely this capacity. She could have issued a standard diplomatic boilerplate. She chose leadership instead. This is what Caribbean transformation looks like. Leaders who recognize that our region's survival depends on democratic solidarity, strategic partnerships with democratic powers, and moral clarity about authoritarianism, regardless of ideological packaging. National transformation through international leadership. Trinidad and Tobago's domestic transformation under the UNC government, institutional modernization, economic diversification efforts, democratic accountability, finds its international expression in this Venezuela stance. A government serious about democratic governance at home naturally stands with democracy abroad. This coherence between domestic and foreign policy is itself transformational. By positioning Trinidad and Tobago as the Caribbean's democratic conscience on Venezuela, Prime Minister Persaud Bissessa elevated our nation's international standing, strengthened relationships with democratic allies, and demonstrated that principled foreign policy serves national interests. In conclusion, the leader the Caribbean needs. History will record that when Venezuelan democracy hung in the balance and the Caribbean region faced a defining choice, only one leader possessed the courage, clarity, and conviction to stand unambiguously for democratic values. Prime Minister Kamla Persaud Bissessa. This is not merely symbolic. It is substantive leadership with real consequences, enhanced international credibility, strengthened democratic partnerships, moral authority in regional affairs, and a demonstration that Caribbean nations need not choose between principle and pragmatism. Bold leadership achieves both. Other Caribbean leaders may eventually follow where Prime Minister Persaud Bissessa led. But leadership is defined by who moves first, who accepts risk, who chooses principle when consensus favors caution. On Venezuela, Prime Minister Persaud Bissessa stands alone among Caribbean leaders. That solitary position is not isolation. It is the price and privilege of transformational leadership. The Caribbean has its leader. Trinidad and Tobago chose well. History is watching, and the verdict is already clear.